Have you ever felt that knot of anxiety when you're thinking about your job search? Maybe wondering if something in your background, I don't know, a gap on your resume, maybe even your age might hold you back. Or perhaps you're just not sure how to find a workplace that genuinely fits you. It's a really common feeling, I think. Today, we're diving into something really crucial. It's Chapter 9 from Dr. Joseph H.Schuessler's fantastic guide, Launching Your Tech Career. You know, the one for MIS, CIS, and IT graduates. Our mission here is pretty straightforward. We want to arm you, especially if you're heading into MIS, CIS, or IT, with some clear, actionable strategies. We want you to feel, well, empowered to navigate those common personal challenges in the job search, and just as importantly, to confidently pick workplaces that really align with your goals and values.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this isn't just abstract stuff we're talking about. As a professor of information systems at Tarleton State University, I see this all the time. This content, it's incredibly vital. For my students, particularly those in courses like BCIS 4385 Professional Development, think of this as a direct part of your journey into the tech world. We're really talking about practical skills you can use right away.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, if you find these insights clicking for you, if something resonates, maybe do us a quick favor. Hit that follow button. Or maybe share this with someone who could use these perspectives. Or even just pause and think about what really sticks with you. It helps keep these conversations going. Okay, so let's get into it. We're starting by looking at something pretty fundamental, identifying what might feel like personal challenges or, hurdles in your job search. The chapter does a great job pointing out that everyone's background is different. And part of getting ready is recognizing what could be seen as a challenge or maybe a limitation in your specific situation. It's about really knowing your own story.
And what's really key here, I think, is the distinction Dr. Schuessler makes between real limitations and perceived limitations or biases. This isn't just semantics. It really affects how you approach things like interviews, your resume. A real limitation is, well, objective. Maybe you genuinely don't know a specific coding language that's required. Or you have a physical condition that definitely needs a particular accommodation. Those are concrete things.
Okay, that sounds clear enough. But, when you're actually in the thick of a job search, how do you really know if it's a genuine skill gap versus just, I don't know, self-doubt? Or maybe an employer's bias?
That's the tough part, isn't it? A perceived limitation, on the other hand, it's often rooted in bias. Either your own assumptions, like thinking, oh, I'm too old, or an employer's stereotypes. For instance, being older is a fact, right? But assuming no one hires 50-year-old developers, that's a perceived obstacle. It's often a bias, not a hard truth. We have things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, protecting against discrimination based on physical limitations. And actually, many companies are now actively looking for experienced pros. It really comes down to how you frame your story and challenge those perceptions.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's unpack some of these common challenges the chapter gets into. First one, dealing with physical or mental disabilities in the job market. It can feel like the system isn't always welcoming.
Yeah, and this is where legal protections are just so important. As the chapter highlights, a disability might mean you need certain workplace accommodations, maybe adaptive equipment, but here's the key thing. Under the ADA, employers with 15 or more employees, they have to provide reasonable accommodations to qualified people. They absolutely cannot discriminate. So, for example, an employer can't just refuse to even consider you because you might need, say, a sign language interpreter during the interview process itself.
Wow, that's powerful. It really puts the onus on the employer to ensure fairness.
Exactly. Now, the stats, well, they do show a gap. Only about 22.7% of Americans with disabilities were employed in 2024 versus like 65.5% of those without. So systemic hurdles are still there. But it's also true that inclusive hiring is growing. And importantly, many disabilities, especially in tech fields like IT and CIS, don't actually prevent success if the right accommodations are in place. Tech is starting to see the value in neurodiversity and different perspectives. It's about capability.
Okay, next up, let's tackle something that I think worries a lot of people in tech, maybe quietly: age. Tech often gets this unfair rap as being just for young people, which can be really discouraging for experienced folks or older students.
It's a very valid concern. Age bias, sadly, it does exist. The chapter mentions that nearly 20% of discrimination charges in tech are actually age-related.
Yeah.
So if you're maybe retraining or coming back to tech after doing something else, that worry. Totally understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also vital to know about the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, the ADEA. That's a legal protection for workers 40 and older.
Okay, so there's the legal side. But what about those stereotypes? The idea that older tech workers just can't keep up.
Yeah, that's a myth. And the data really shows it's a myth. Research consistently finds that experienced tech employees often get better as they age. They're actually more likely to be top performers from 40 onwards. Yeah. It hammers home that experience isn't a negative in tech, it's a massive asset. Think about it. Deep domain knowledge, polished problem solving, reliability, mentoring skills, those are things every strong team needs.
That's a great perspective. Okay, another common worry, and I hear this from students quite a bit, employment gaps. Life happens, people take time off for family, health, school, whatever. But it feels like this big red flag on a resume.
Oh, it absolutely can feel that way. And there's data to back up the concern. One study showed applicants with a work gap had something like a 45% lower chance of getting interviews. That's significant. But as Dr. Schuessler points out, the crucial thing is how you handle the gap. The reasons are usually very normal family care, health, going back to school. What seems like a barrier can often be reframed if you explain it clearly and confidently. And honestly, especially post-pandemic, employers seem a bit more understanding about gaps.
So it's not really the gap itself, but the story you tell about it. That's a key takeaway. This actually reminds me of a really good case example in the chapter that nails this point. Can you tell us about that one?
Oh yeah, it's a good one. It's about a CIS graduate who had a 5-year break from her career. She'd taken time off to care for a family member. Very understandable. Initially, she was really worried this gap would make employers think she was unreliable. That was her perceived limitation. But once she explained the situation confidently, and this is critical, highlighted the online courses and freelance projects she'd done during that time, well, employers weren't just understanding, they were impressed. Impressed by her commitment to learning even outside a traditional job.
So it wasn't just explaining the gap, it was showing what she did during it. That really shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
Completely changes the narrative. Like the chapter says, paraphrasing a bit, a gap is just a fact. How you frame it decides if it's a handicap or just a chapter.
Mm.
And that idea applies to so many of these perceived issues. It's about being proactive, telling your story effectively. It's something we really stress in professional development, owning your narrative.
That's a perfect transition, actually, into our next bit, the strategies. Proactive ways to turn these challenges into strengths. We've talked about identifying them. Now, how do we actually, face them?
Right. The core idea here is really a mindset shift. Instead of focusing on what you think you lack or what someone might see as a negative, you need to actively put a spotlight on what you do bring to the table. It's not about ignoring reality, but leading with your value.
Okay, so let's make that practical. If someone has a disability, how would they apply that in their job search? What does that look like?
Your resume, your cover letter, definitely your interview answers. They should always lead with your qualifications, your achievements first. Talk about your technical skills, your projects, certifications, accomplishments. If you're great at network security or you showed leadership in a student group, put that right up front. When you confidently showcase your skills and value, you help the employer see you, the capable professional first, not just the disability.
Okay. And for those experienced workers we mentioned, the ones worried about age bias, how do they emphasize strengths?
If you're an experienced pro, lean into the value that only comes with time. Maybe it's deep industry knowledge, a proven track record. Maybe it's that ability to mentor younger colleagues. And if you're worried about the can't keep up myth, counter it directly. Mention recent training you've done, new technologies you've mastered. Show them you're still learning, always growing, just like we push for lifelong learning in tech.
Right. And what about the other end of the spectrum? New grads, maybe people with limited professional experience? That's a common challenge too.
Yeah, for new grads or folks with less direct experience, the key is transferable skills. Think hard about what you've learned. Problem solving, teamwork, adaptability, communication. Highlight academic projects, internships, even relevant volunteer tech work. You can absolutely frame what might seem like a lack of professional experience as enthusiasm, a fresh perspective, and a solid foundation ready to go.
This is super practical. For listeners right now, is there like one actionable thing they could do to start putting this into practice?
Definitely. A great exercise one I often give my students is this. Sit down. Actually write out 3 to 5 key strengths or unique assets you have. Could be technical, could be interpersonal, like communication, could be unique experiences. Then practice talking about those strengths confidently, naturally, because what you highlight, that's what the employer focuses on. By leading with strengths, you guide the conversation away from perceived negatives towards your actual value.
That feels really empowering. Okay, let's shift gears slightly to another key strategy, knowing when and how to seek accommodations. How do you do that without feeling like you're asking for something special?
Yeah, it's crucial to reframe that. It's not asking for special treatment. It's about knowing your rights and advocating for what you need to do your best work. If you have a disability or a condition requiring accommodation, the law, specifically the EEOC guidelines based on the ADA, says you're entitled to reasonable accommodations, both in hiring and on the job. An employer has to make those reasonable changes so a qualified person can be considered for a job and perform its essential functions. They can't just refuse to hire you because you might need an accommodation, unless it causes undue hardship, which means significant difficulty or expense, and honestly, that's pretty rare for most common accommodations.
Can you give some specific examples? What might accommodations look like, say, during hiring versus once you're employed?
Sure, in hiring, it could be adjusting an interview location for accessibility, maybe providing a sign language interpreter or assistive tech for someone with a vision impairment, or even allowing extra time on a skills test if there's a learning disability involved. Those are generally reasonable. On the job, especially in IT, common things might be an ergonomic setup, maybe flexible hours for therapy, or specialized software like screen readers or voice recognition tools.
I think there's this persistent myth that accommodations are super expensive or a huge hassle for employers. Is that actually true?
That's a really important myth to debunk. Studies, like one from the Department of Labor, consistently show that most accommodations cost very little, and many actually cost nothing at all. Think about flexible schedules that cost $0, and employers benefit. They get access to talented people, foster inclusivity. It's a win-win. Knowing this can really help you feel more confident asking for what you need. And there are resources too, like the Job Accommodation Network, JABR. They offer free expert advice.
JAN, okay, that's a great resource to know. Perfect. Lastly, let's loop back quickly to those employment gaps. You said it's all about the framing. What's the best way to actually address a gap on your resume?
Yeah, the chapter gives some really solid practical advice here. On the resume itself, a good strategy is to include a brief, positive explanation, maybe in parentheses or even as its own entry for that period, especially if you did something relevant. So instead of just leaving a blank space, you could write something like career sabbatical, 2019-2021, took time off for family care and completed professional certification in data analytics.
Oh, that's brilliant. It takes what could be an unknown, maybe even a negative, and immediately reframes it as responsibility and growth.
Exactly. It explains the gap, stops the employer from guessing, and actively turns it into a positive story. Responsibility, continuous learning, professional development. It shows maturity and commitment even during a break.
Wow. This has been such an insightful discussion, really digging into navigating those personal challenges. We've covered a lot from reframing limitations to approaching the market with confidence.
And I just want to reiterate, especially for my students in BCIS 4385 and all you aspiring tech pros out there, these aren't just abstract ideas. These are essential tools for your professional development as you launch your careers in MIS, CIS, and IT. Keep thinking about how these apply to your story.
We really want to thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Chapter 9 of Launching Your Tech Career. We genuinely hope it's given you not just information, but maybe a boost of confidence, a sense of purpose.
Yeah, and if this discussion did resonate, if it brought you some value, please do remember to hit follow, maybe share it with someone else who'd benefit, and keep reflecting on how these strategies fit into your own journey.
So, thinking about everything we've discussed today, what perceived limitation are you now ready to reframe as your unique strength? And maybe more importantly, how are you going to confidently communicate that to potential employers? Give that some thought. Remember, your career is a journey, and every step you take today builds the future you imagine. Keep learning, keep growing, and go make it happen.